สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ
Welcome to NBT World's The Fireside. I'm Benjamin Ruchopakan.
And I'm Warisa Nidanat Gomon. Every week we have a fireside chat exploring what's going on in Thailand, diving deep into our latest obsessions.
So for decades, actually, electricity is something that governments, they plan quietly in the background. And as long as the lights stayed on and the prices were stable, most people didn't really have to think about where their electricity came from. But today, that's beginning to change. The rapid growth of AI data centers, electric vehicles, and advanced manufacturing is driving electricity demand to new highs. Now, at the same time, geopolitical tensions, volatile fossil fuel markets, and increasingly stringent environmental standards are changing the way that countries are thinking about their energy security. So electricity isn't just a utility anymore. It's become a strategic resource that is shaping economic competitiveness, investment decisions, and even regional cooperation.
Right, and Thailand is responding on multiple fronts. At the household level, the government is encouraging people to install rooftop solar systems and sell excess electricity back to the grid. And at the national level, it is planning for an electricity system capable of supporting data centers, high-tech manufacturing, and a growing clean energy economy. And beyond its borders, Thailand is also playing a central role in a much larger vision, connecting Southeast Asia through the ASEAN Power Grid. These may sound like separate topics, but actually they're all part of the same story, driven by the same factors at different scales. And in this episode, we'll be looking at three things. Firstly, how Thailand is encouraging households to become electricity producers. Then we're going to look at why expanding clean energy has become an economic priority. And lastly, we're going to be exploring how regional electricity trading could reshape Southeast Asia's energy future.
That's right. So until recently, installing rooftop solar in Thailand was involving more than simply buying panels and putting them on your roof. Homeowners had to navigate building regulations like limits on the size of the installation, structural assessments by licensed engineers, and advance notification to local authorities. While these requirements are intended to ensure safety, they also added time, cost, complexity, particularly for smaller household projects. Now, in late 2025, however, the government significantly simplified those rules. Under new regulations, rooftop solar installations are no longer treated as building modifications that require additional approvals as long as the system does not exceed the maximum weight limit of 20 kilograms per square meter. So there is an upper weight limit. Now, the previous restrictions on installation size have been removed, and homeowners no longer need to obtain a structural assessment from the licensed engineer or notify local authorities before installing a system. So these changes not only apply to homes, but also to commercial buildings and factories, which makes rooftop solar considerably easier to install while retaining basic safety requirements.
Yeah, and now any surplus electricity can be sold back to the grid, like I said earlier, turning residential properties into small-scale contributors to Thailand's electricity supply. Now, applications are now open nationwide as well, so go and get that fixed and, apply for it. So residents in Bangkok, Nonthaburi, and Samut Prakan, all kind of in the central of nearby Bangkok, can apply through the Metropolitan Electricity Authority's My Energy platform, while residents in all other provinces use the Provincial Electricity Authorities or PPIM system. Now, once an application is submitted, it goes through a qualification review before the applicant signs a power purchase agreement, and then the installed system is then inspected to verify that it meets technical and safety requirements before it can begin supplying electricity to the grid.
So these financial incentives are intended to make rooftop solar a more practical investment for households, because if you're allowed to sell electricity back to the grid, then you're not just reducing your bill, you're also, making a tidy, profit perhaps on some hours of the day. Now, state utilities will purchase surplus electricity at a fixed feed-in tariff of 2.2 baht per unit for a period of 10 years. So for the first 10 years, it's a great deal. Each household can export up to 5 kilowatts of electricity per meter. Now, to help offset the installation costs, homeowners who install rooftop systems between March 2026 and December 2027, so all until the end of next year, are also eligible for a personal income tax deduction of 200,000 baht. And the government has also instructed the Ministry of Interior, together with the MEA and PEA, to consolidate the application process under the one-stop service model. Now, the objective is to simplify approvals and make participation more accessible. For homeowners, the benefits are relatively straightforward, I would say. If you got lower electricity bills, and you also have the opportunity to earn additional income from the excess generation during peak hours of the day.
Right. And so for the government, however, the program serves a broader purpose. Now, expanding rooftop solar increases the amount of electricity that can be generated domestically, reducing dependence on imported fuels while creating a more distributed electricity system. Instead of relying exclusively on large power stations, generation capacity is spread across thousands of individual rooftops, adding resilience to the grid and supporting Thailand's long-term clean energy objectives. Now, analysts believe that the policy is also intended as a first step toward a more decentralized electricity system, one in which consumers are increasingly able to participate in generating the power they use rather than relying solely on centralized generation.
Now, encouraging more households to install solar panels is only one part of this transition. It's not just enough for us to, make it more affordable, but also to instill trust. As adoption grows, so does the need to ensure that the systems are installed safely, that they operate reliably, and can be managed responsibly throughout their entire life cycle. So those concerns came into sharper focus in 2025. Unfortunately, a homeowner had filed a complaint over a rooftop solar installation that allegedly used substandard equipment and improper electrical wiring. So according to the investigators of this case, the installation had suffered from voltage fluctuations, melting electrical components, and a significant fire risk. And the case eventually led to a criminal investigation.
Right, and more on that incident, it actually prompted a broad regulatory response. The Office of the Consumer Protection Board launched nationwide inspections of solar products, including panels, inverters, and batteries, while also moving to strengthen consumer protections. Officials are seeking to classify solar installation services as contract-controlled business, which would require contractors to clearly specify the equipment, components, and standards being provided. Now, at the same time, solar equipment has been designated as a controlled label product, requiring manufacturers and retailers to provide complete and accurate product information.
That's right. The Ministry of Industry has moved to strengthen the technical standards. It recognizes that rooftop solar systems consist of far more than just the solar panels themselves. The Thai Industrial Standards Institute, or TISI, is expanding mandatory standards to cover critical components in a solar rooftop system. That includes direct current or DC circuit breakers, fuses, the electrical wiring, the lithium battery storage systems, if you choose to include that, junction boxes, and cable connectors. So the longer term objective of this entire movement towards standardization and certification is to make comprehensive safety standards for rooftop solar systems to be compulsory by early 2027. And these measures are intended not just to reduce the risk of accidents that come from these systems, but also to give consumers greater confidence that rooftop solar becomes more common.
Right. And there is actually another challenge that receives far less attraction and attention. What happens after the panels stop generating electricity? That's a good question. So most solar panels have an operational lifespan of around 25 to around 30 years. As installations continue to increase, Thailand is expected to generate between roughly 9,900 and 57,200 tons of end-of-life solar panel waste by 2030. Now, many panels also contain materials such as lead and antimony, making proper recycling and disposal increasingly important. We want to make sure that we get rid of those properly or not. It can become toxic for the human and just basically any living thing. Now, to prepare for the wave of waste, the Ministry of Industry has begun promoting the development of a dedicated solar panel recycling industry, alongside broader efforts to expand battery recycling and strengthen controls on electronic waste.
That's right. These measures reflect a broader reality that expanding solar energy isn't just about installing more panels. It also requires clear consumer protections, robust technical standards, and a plan for managing the equipment throughout the entire life cycle so that it's a circular economy. So as Thailand scales up rooftop solar, building public confidence may prove just as important as expanding generation capacity.
Would you want your house to have solar panels?
Yeah, I actually looked into it, and because of the 200,000 baht tax deduction on personal income tax, that was a big motivator for me, for sure. But then, as the story points out, there were cases of substandard systems. Because of the cases of substandard systems, melting electrical components, and not installing it up to code and creating fire hazards, that damaged my personal confidence in perhaps getting one of these solar systems. And I imagine that case is probably true for many people. I think that once they started hearing these cases of, they installed the wrong components, they don't know who is going to certify that it was installed correctly, how can I trust the service provider, how can I trust the contractor? I think that damages confidence, and that is a huge barrier to adoption. I mean, solar rooftops are nothing new, but they're not widespread. They're not as widespread as perhaps they should be, and usually only commercial buildings will do it because maybe they have enough rooftop to begin with. Maybe they have a big enough building and it's at a factory and you want to offset the electricity. That all makes sense. But at an individual retail level, I mean, these systems aren't cheap. They're not cheap at all. So, if they're talking about 200,000 baht, I mean, like, some of these systems go for way more than that, depending on the capacity, depending on whether or not you add the battery system to it as well. But I do think it makes sense because if you have an EV, that battery system, it's really helpful. It's also good for when you want to power your appliances at night. So there are many arguments in favor, but we have a lot of outstanding questions to answer. And so that thing about consumer protections, that thing about the confidence in the system, and also what are we going to do with all this e-waste? E-waste was a huge headline in Thailand for a while because we were importing a lot of e-waste, and we were supposed to manage it at these different recycling factories, but some of them weren't licensed and some of them were not managing it properly. So there's all these things that, it really isn't just as simple as installing a panel on a rooftop. What do we do with the panels afterwards, and who's making sure that they're installed correctly? So those are the two things that are really keeping me like, maybe I won't install it right away. Maybe I want the industry to settle a little bit more, become a little bit more established.
Right.
And once it does become established, I'm definitely going to take advantage of that tax incentive. For me, that's a huge draw. What about for you? Like, for you, is there a part of it that really appeals to you?
I guess just the whole clean energy in general appeals to me. But I do live in a condo, so it's not up to me personally to install it at my place of living. But one thing, and I know this is like a little bit too beyond, but I feel like Thailand just has so much sun. There's just so much energy that could be utilized. I wish they could, like, I don't know, just thinking out of the box, I guess, like, if they could just make roads out of solar panel and then all the cars break them, or I don't know.
I get what you're saying, though. There are places where they're exploring how to bring solar panels to the sidewalk or things like that. There are places that are exploring different applications of solar panels as well. So I definitely see what you're saying. And that is not a unique situation at all. For people living in condos, it's not up to them. It's not up to them at all to like whether or not their condo makes use of the solar rooftops, and whether or not everybody wants to pay more to the management fee. In Thai, I believe it's called the Swan Kang of the condo in order to install these solar panels. And none of them are going to get the tax deduction for it, right?
Exactly.
It's going to be the condo managers, whoever's operating the condo, that is going to get it. So, the incentives are a little bit misaligned for condos, right? But I think that it makes sense for businesses. I think it makes sense for detached homeowners, things like that.
Yeah.
So, if you were living in your own home, is it more of a serious conversation for you?
I guess I'm kind of similar to you as well. I'm not one of those early adopters at all, especially when it comes to tech, because I'm not very knowledgeable about it. I would like to see other people try it first, and then once I know it really works and there's like a place where, a one-stop shop that I can just like go and get it done and complete it, that's when I would probably adopt it. Yeah.
That's right. I think there are layers of consumer protections that need to be in play. Like, it should feel as safe as getting a car, It should feel as like, okay, I trust the make and model. I trust the warranty on this thing, and I trust that the cost savings over time are going to be what they are. That when I sell electricity back to the state, that they're going to buy it at this rate, and I can make the cost calculation based off of that rate in 10 years, right? So that's something that these are all questions that, they still have to answer. And while rooftop solar can help households reduce electricity bills and contribute clean energy to the grid, it represents only one part of a much larger shift taking place in Thailand's energy system. The country's future electricity demand is increasingly being shaped by the industry, including the rapid expansion of data centers. Now, AI, cloud computing, and digital services are continuing to grow. So too does the amount of electricity needed to power the servers that are behind all of these technologies. Unlike many traditional industries, data centers require a continuous and highly reliable supply of electricity around the clock. And that's why fossil fuels have been, really the mainstay of the industrial sector.
And recognizing this trend, the government is preparing a new power development plan covering the period from 2026 all the way to 2050. Now, according to the Energy Minister, Ekanat Prompan, the plan aims to increase the share of clean energy in Thailand's electricity mix to 60%. It also aims to ensure that there is enough generation capacity to support rising demand from emerging industries.
Now, meeting that demand requires more than just building additional power plants. Electricity has to be available where the new investment is taking place. Now, to address this, the Board of Investment, that's the BOI, has launched the Thailand Fast Pass initiative designed to remove some of the biggest infrastructure bottlenecks that are facing investors here in Thailand. One of its main priorities is the availability of electricity. So under the program, the BOI is working directly with the Energy Regulatory Commission to coordinate electricity planning before major projects move forward. Large electricity users, particularly data centers, must now confirm that sufficient power is available before submitting applications for BOI investment incentives.
Right. And that's why the government is also developing what it calls a power map. And it identifies areas of the country with sufficient electricity capacity and clean energy infrastructure to support future industrial investment. Now, the goal is to direct new projects towards locations where the grid can accommodate additional demand without creating delays or requiring major last-minute upgrades. At the same time, Thailand is continuing to expand its electricity generation. Among the projects recently approved by the BOI is the Dan Khun Thot Wind 1 project in Nakhon Ratchasima. It's an 89 megawatt wind farm with an investment value of approximately 4.7 billion baht. Projects like these are intended to increase the amount of renewable electricity available as industrial demand continues to grow.
Now, this shift also reflects a broader change in how investment decisions are made. For many multinational companies, access to clean electricity is an important consideration, alongside factors such as the labor, the logistics, and of course, taxation. So, environmental, social, and governance, or that is ESG requirements, are becoming more prominent, and listed companies in Thailand are now subject to mandatory sustainability reporting under international standards. And if these companies have to export their products anywhere, the other consumers and importers of those products, they want to know that these are net zero or that they're carbon neutral, right? So at the same time, policies such as the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism is increasing pressure on exporters to demonstrate that their products are manufactured using lower carbon sources of energy. In other words, electricity isn't just the operating costs. It's increasingly becoming part of Thailand's competitiveness strategy, helping determine where companies choose to invest, what factories are being built, and how easily Thai products can compete in international markets.
And up to this point, we've looked at how Thailand is expanding clean energy at home, but electricity is increasingly becoming a regional issue rather than a purely national one. So recent geopolitical events have reinforced that reality, and disruptions to shipping routes have driven up global prices for crude oil and liquefied natural gas as well, exposing the vulnerability of countries that depend heavily on imported fuels. And at the same time, electricity demand continues to rise across Southeast Asia, driven by industrial expansion, electric vehicles, and increasingly AI data centers.
So against the backdrop of this higher electricity demand, the ASEAN Power Grid has taken on a new strategic importance. For a while, it was hard to get the countries to collaborate concretely on how to connect their infrastructure and compatibility and standards and whatnot. But now it's become very important that ASEAN has more self-sufficiency in terms of its electricity, in terms of its energy grid. So originally conceived as an infrastructure project to connect national electricity networks, the initiative is now being viewed as a way to strengthen the region's collective energy security. You see, it's not just all about renewable energy, but energy security. This term is very important. This concept is very important here in ASEAN, especially given some geopolitical disruptions abroad. So instead of each country relying solely on its own generating capacity, an interconnected grid would allow electricity to flow across borders, making better use of the region's diverse renewable resources. So we know that Laos, for example, has abundant hydropower. Vietnam has significant wind potential, and Indonesia has geothermal resources as well as growing solar capacity. So when we are able to connect these systems, the countries can export their excess electricity when the supply is high and import power when domestic generation falls short, making renewable energy more practical than at a regional scale.
Yes, and progress is already on its way. The Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore Power Integration Project, or LTMS PIP, entered its second phase in 2026, doubling cross-border electricity trade from 100 to 200 megawatts. Now, while the increase in capacity is significant, the project is equally important because it demonstrates that multiple countries can coordinate the commercial, regulatory, and technical arrangements required for multilateral electricity trading.
Now, beyond that overland transmission that connects those countries, starting from Laos, going to Thailand, and then Malaysia, and then Singapore, right? So that's all overland in mainland ASEAN. New cross-border projects are also emerging. Indonesia has appointed its sovereign wealth fund, the Nantara, to lead the development of electricity exports to Singapore. Now, the initiative aims to deliver at least 3.4 gigawatts of new low-carbon electricity by 2035 through subsea transmission cables supported by new renewable generation rather than the existing domestic supply. Making these projects work, however, requires more than just connecting the infrastructure. Electricity markets need common technical standards, they need transparent pricing mechanisms, they need regulatory frameworks that allow power to move across borders with confidence.
And in Thailand, the Energy Regulatory Commission has introduced a third-party access framework that establishes how private producers can use the national grid and how transmission charges are calculated. Measures such as standardized wheeling charges and system balancing rules are intended to provide the commercial certainty needed for long-term investment. Financing is another major challenge. The latest ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan estimates that achieving the regional's long-term renewable energy and interconnection goals will require around $764 billion in investment. To help mobilize that capital, ASEAN, together with the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank, launched the ASEAN Power Grid Financing Initiative back last year in 2025. The program is designed to reduce investment risks, support project preparation, and attract greater private sector participation in regional transmission infrastructure.
Now, according to Satvinder Singh, the Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC, the ASEAN Power Grid is no longer a distant concept. It is becoming an investable proposition. So the household solar panels that we were discussing at the beginning of the episode, it's part of a much larger picture we can see here. Now, expanding renewable generation at home is just the first step. Building the infrastructure to share the electricity across borders is an entirely different proposition. And together, these point to an energy system that is not just cleaner, but also more interconnected, more resilient to external shocks, and replacing the conventional carbon-heavy methods that have existed and have dominated the region.
And now we turn it to our audience. Would you like to see any clean incentives in your country?
Let us know in the comment section of NBT World's online channels. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
สวัสดีครับ
Sawadee ka.